time for our next speaker. Our next speaker's name is Kater Cheek. Her title of her speech is the General Slocum, New York Penultimate Tragedy. This is a speech number 5, historic event from the Storytelling Manual. This is one of our advanced manuals. Her speech is 79 minutes, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. The purpose of the speech is to tell a folk tale that is entertaining and enjoyable for a specific age group.
No.
No?
Sorry. Eric, could you tell the purpose of the
Yeah,
speech?
'cause I got that offline. That's what it said it was supposed to be.
So the little rundown, the executive summary here. Storytellers can be historians, using their talents to tell the world about the events that shaped it. Stories about the Knights of the Round Table, battles, explorers, and leaders are as interesting today as they were many years ago. When telling a historical story, narrow it to one event and make sure it has a plot, conflict, characters, setting, and action. Carefully develop the characters. You may have to cut the story so your time fits.
Thank you. Everyone knows about 9/11, but most people don't know about what had been New York's greatest tragedy, the sinking of General Slocum in 1904. The shocking event riveted the nation and changed how we think about maritime and fire safety. Please welcome Kater Cheek.
So in 1904, June 15th, was a beautiful day in New York City. And the parishioners of St. Mark's Evangelical Church from Kleine Deutschland on the Lower East Side were very excited. Can you go next slide? Because it was going to be their 17th annual church picnic. They were wearing their Sunday finery. They'd all saved up their pennies to buy tickets to go on the charter. And they'd spent $350 to rent this boat to take them to the picnic grounds on Long Island. One of the people aboard is a little Adela, and this is the church. It's actually a synagogue now, which I'll explain to you why later. Next one, please. Little Adela Liebenow was one of the people on board, and she was 6 months old. She was with her mother and her father and her siblings. Little did they know this would be an event that would change their lives and the lives of many people in New York City. They started out early in the morning and got a late start because, of course, people were rushing to get on the boat. And they set out and everything looked perfect. And then a little boy said to a deckhand, "Hey, mister, I see smoke." And the deckhand said, "Whatever, little boys have big imaginations. They think it's smoke, but it's really just steam." But he decided to go and check on it. And when he went down to check on it, he saw, yes, there was smoke coming out from under a closed door. So what do you think he did? He opened the door. And of course, as soon as he opened the door, the oxygen rushed in, and what had been a smoldering ember turned into a 1,000-degree conflagration. They think later what happened is that the glassware had been packed in dry straw and hay, which is an excellent fire accelerant. And when they light the candles or the lanterns to see what's going on, they would just toss the matches onto whatever happened to be there. So the deckhand decided, I have to put this fire out. And he saw some canvas, and he reached to grab the canvas, but it was attached to something. So he just pulled the whole bag of charcoal and threw it on there, which was not the dumbest thing he did that day. The dumbest thing he did was to leave the door open, letting the oxygen flow in as he ran to the captain to tell the captain what to do. The captain said, "I'm driving here, just put the fire out." So they went to the pumps to get the pumps open, and they started pumping the water, pumping the water, pumping the water, and the water's not coming out. Well, the linen hoses that were folded back and forth were rotted. They weren't that great to begin with, and they had been out in the weather too long. And so pressure just broke the hoses, and they tried to touch a new rubber hose, but the coupling was broken because the hose had ripped off. As far as the captain knew, they'd put that fire out. They had not put the fire out. The wooden boat quickly caught fire, and I think we're ready for the next slide. Here we go. The tugboat's trying to put the fire out. Caught fire, and the fire rushed back so quickly that children's clothing caught on fire, and they ran to their mothers like human torches. People were screaming. They were running around. They had no idea what to do, and the crew had no idea what to do either because they had never had a single fire drill. In fact, some of them had been hired 18 days earlier and had no idea what to do. What do we do? What do we do? They ran to the lifeboats. The lifeboats had been wired on, and in some places they had also been glued to the deck with paint. Those lifeboats were not coming off. So the mothers grabbed life preservers and put them around the necks of their children and tied them on and tossed their children into the Hudson hoping to save them, and watched in horror as the children sank as if millstones were around their necks because the life preserver's cork had been rotted and lacked all buoyancy. It's very difficult to swim when you're on fire. It's very difficult to swim when you have two children in tow who are panicked and you're panicked too. It's very, very difficult to swim when you have two children on tow and you're panicked and you're diving into swiftly moving water that is full of drowning people who are clambering at anything to stay afloat. It is especially difficult to do this when you're wearing a corset and a bustle and 20 yards of worsted wool. 1,300 people or more got on this passenger boat. 1,061 of them burned to death or drowned to death, and people on the shore watched them. Meanwhile, the captain ignored pleas to turn to shore and just decided he would go straight ahead just a little bit faster. The captain actually survived, and little Adele Liebenau also survived, but many, many others were not fortunate. The rescue services, they had no experience. They set up makeshift morgues, but they didn't know how to deal with this many sick and injured people, and the survivors were left to find their way home on their own. It destroyed their community. The Lower East Side had been Kleine Deutschland, Little Germany, but most of the people were too distraught by the horrible memories of the crepe on the windows and the people dressed in black, and eventually they disbanded and moved to other parts of New York City, or in little Adele Liebenau's case, her mother ended up moving to New Jersey and never returning. Adele survived, but her siblings did not survive. Her mother was burned over half of her body, and she never forgot it. Adele was chosen to be the person who pulled off the covering revealing this memorial, which you can see in Manhattan, commemorating this horrible tragedy. However, there are some good things to take from this. Adele actually survived to be 100 years old. She perished just a few months shy of the 100-year anniversary of this tragic event. And because everyone was so horrified by this event, they changed some legislation. So if you're ever on a boat and you see the life preservers and it has a date of inspection and every single one of them is inspected, part of that is due to legislation enacted as a result of this tragedy. And if you are ever fortunate enough to be on a cruise ship and they give you a rundown of safety features, please pay attention and do not use that as an excuse to get an extra drink. Because knowing how to get on and off the lifeboats and having proper lifeboats and life preservers can save your life. And if you ever are fortunate enough to be on a boat, either in New York or anywhere else, not only should you pay attention to this, but you should probably not wear a corset and a bustle and 20 years of fabric. So, I ran through this material really quickly. Let's go to the next slide. I think there's one more. Nope, okay. So this is Adele. She's at 18 months old, and this is the memorial, and the 4 statues are representing belief in the afterlife, grief, tragedy, and despair, I believe. There were some other photos that I included in here, but my coworker suggested that they would be a little bit distressing. There's actually quite a few photos online if you want to see pictures of the dead people washing on shore and the little babies in their coffins. I guess I've been watching too much Westworld and Game of Thrones because that didn't even shock me. But I thought maybe it might be a little distressing, so I left it out. If you want to learn more about this tragedy, there's a book that I read that I got most of the information from. It's by Edward McDonald. It's called Ship Ablaze, and it's available in hardback, and I believe it's also available in softback. It came out quite a few years ago, so you should be able to get a copy from the library. All right, thank you very much, Jim.
Thank you.
Our second evaluator is our once and hopefully future Toastmasters member,
You won't have my vote.
Eric Short. And you'll be evaluating Cater speech.
Thank you very much, Mr. General Evaluator. Cater, thank you so much for that wonderful speech. It's with much gratitude that I'm up here to say that I had the opportunity to evaluate your speech. And I will say, you could tell it was an amazing speech. I didn't hear Chris say cacao once. So you know you had everyone hooked. You did have an excellent kind of composition for the speech from a whole. Looking at your objectives, the way you selected your story, broke it down and presented to us was fantastic. You again selected an excellent topic. And then one thing that I think could have used a little bit more development was some characters. But kind of going back to the beginning with your selection and kind of the structure of the speech, the manuals suggest that you get everyone in a semi-half circle and you sit them down Indian style and you share a story with them. But as a speaker, I think it's your job to set yourself up for success, and you did that. Right? You looked at what the speech was trying to accomplish, and I think you did that. The story that you selected is an excellent example. It's something that all of us maybe can't relate to directly, but it's a very interesting and engaging story, from thinking about kind of the humanity aspects of it, the logistics aspects of it, and then also thinking about our jobs just sometimes where we see something that doesn't make sense or something that we know is a failing system. So I thought it was able to connect with all of us on personal levels. You had as far as the structure goes, again, the climax, you built up to that perfectly. It was very obvious. I was reading the description of the speech, and it talked about, you need to build up to this climax. And I can point to that specific moment in your speech where you did that. You did that through vocal variety. You did that through repetition of a specific portion of the story. You also did that with your rate of speech. So there were a few different levels where it indicated that you were now at the climax of your story, and this was the most engaging part. I really appreciated that. I also liked the vocal variety that you used. You started to talk about, well, this person grabbed this bag and they threw the whole thing of charcoal on this fire. And so that really delineated it from the rest of your story that, hey, there's more connotations here than just a factual statement of someone is throwing charcoal around. I thought that one of the main points of this topic was to develop characters. And I feel like there were a few characters that could have been developed a little bit more. The captain, for example, I didn't really have much of a relationship with him, I felt like, in the story. He just seemed like he was kind of some idiot up there. I'm picturing that Mickey Mouse cartoon where the pilot's
Steamboat
just up
Willie?
there going, yeah, Steamboat Willie just up there driving away. And I think you could have demonized him a little bit more, made some other people sound a little bit safer. And so I didn't feel like I had any personal connection with them, right? And I think there were a few opportunities to do that, and obviously you'd have to elaborate and probably fill in some things that maybe weren't in your reference story, but just to be able to make that seem like a little bit more personal character. And this is a really weird example, but the Titanic, it's a 3-hour movie about a boat sinking, and it's really so much more about the characters, right? And you really connect with the captain in that story, with Jack and with Rose and all these different people. And I feel like the one consistent character that you developed was the little girl. And I thought that was an excellent developing of character as she kind of grew up and how her life changed as a result of this. So overall, I thought you did a great adaptation of the assignment to make sure that you structured yourself for success. The actual structure of your speech was excellent. The climax was really clear. The facts were there. We even threw out a reference story to add some weight to what you were saying. And then you did have some opportunities to further develop characters. But overall, an excellent speech. And again, I didn't hear cow once, so that is a great job. Thank you, Peter.
As usual.